All right, so we are going. So in attendance, I'm Lacey Later.
Jamie Sigurd.
Angelica Granis. And Mackenzie.
Can I put things into this?
Oh, I don't know. You put them in the computer?
That's fine. It's fine. Okay, so we ready to go then?
Yep.
A prayer, if that's all right. I'll say it. Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, very grateful for this day. We're grateful for the chance that we have to gather together and to discuss some topics that we've been learning about in class. We ask for the Spirit to be with us, to guide us in what we're supposed to say. And please help us all in our individual lives, that we will be blessed according to the needs of our families and our own lives. We love thee very much, and we thank thee for all that thou hast done. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so the first question: how might understanding how people develop within multiple contexts give you more compassion and understanding of those who are promoting ideas what are hurtful to men, women, and children? So kind of, I guess, just to start off, I really liked at the beginning of this lesson when Brother Eric was kind of talking about some women that were kind of had really drastic ideas and drastic viewpoints, and he said, these women were once girls, and I know they weren't born with these ideas. So what experiences and individuals have socialized them to think and feel this way? So this was really good for me right off the bat to just kind of get a different viewpoint on how people gain those viewpoints from the people around him and through socialization. And he kind of said, all people who see differently than you were socialized to think this way through their experiences. And what they were taught, whether it was indirectly or directly. So I guess, like, on the surface, it's like, how in the world do people view this way? Like, why would anyone believe this drastic viewpoint? But in reality, it's because they were raised that way. Maybe their culture believes that way, and just based off of like the people that are around them. So I think it really opened my eyes to see how people view differently and how that's okay. And it's not necessarily their fault either. And it's just because that's how they were socialized.
I agree. I think that's what was most eye-opening to me as well. Is I think it's easy for us to just jump to conclusions of judging the individual and judging their own personal decisions. But as we look at like the MAC or whatever, you know, it's so much more than just the individual. And I think it is unfair, of course, for us to judge just off of the individual. But I think it's really important that we just try to understand them and try to understand where they're coming from and understand why where we're coming from and how we're influenced, and, you know, if our influences are valid and true and right.
Yeah, I have an example of that. My opinions changed on a few things as I've gotten older. You know, I grew up in Utah, so, you know, very Mormon-y, perfect life, whatever. But I was always like, don't do drugs, don't drink, don't do all these things. And like the medical marijuana issue came up, and like, you know, a lot of people are like, why not? You know, let's legalize marijuana. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a drug. Let's never do drugs. Let's never do this. And then my 4-year-old started having seizures, and we don't know why. I think they just started out of the blue one day, actually on Halloween 2 years ago. And we have no idea what's going on. And they were kind of like unusual seizures. They're not the typical like lay on the ground and shake, but he was doing different symptoms. And we went through all this. It took like 6 weeks to diagnose it. It was horrible. No one was sleeping. It was like the most traumatic event of my life. And then at the end of it, we're on these heavy, heavy meds where I am being told by the doctor, I'm going to cry, which I wasn't even planning on talking about this. I don't know why it came to my mind, but the doctor is telling me side effects that I need to look for liver failure and like a variety of other things, because he can die from these seizure medicines that are helping him. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. I mean, so not that we're smoking weed over here yet, but if there was an option for him where he's not wrecking his liver as a kindergartner, then we would be open to it. Not that I want my kid high, but honestly, he's high all the time anyway on his medicine. It makes him dizzy. It makes him crazy. It makes him like really high and low. And so from my experience, like I was staunch. No way would I ever even think that way until something happened to me. So I think that's some of the things with this socialization that I think that we shouldn't like just be like, there's no way I'm going to change my mind, but it kind of helps us to look at how other people came to their own conclusions, because maybe there are things we would be open to at different points in our life. So
I love that you said that, just specifically that example too, because like that's something that has touched my family too. My niece, she has seizures too, and so she's tried cannabis. Like, you know, you don't get high off of all cannabis. It's like a misconception. But it's interesting because that's like totally a non-related issue, but it is something that I understand because we were the same way at first, like, no, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you kind of look at it from a different perspective, and it really can open your eyes. And but yeah, I thought that was interesting about this section too, is just like, I feel like knowing and understanding how people are socialized can help us have so much more compassion for where they're coming from, because I really think that it just like cuts down the judgment. Like there's just something to like just taking a minute to really understand where someone's coming from, because I still think of that video we watched a couple weeks ago where it was they're talking about the same-sex marriage thing, and it was that like moral message or whatever, or like once they sat down and were like talking about it openly, they realized that had a lot of the same beliefs. It would just, you know, we kind of are kind of conditioned, I think, to argue about these things because we think that they're so polarized. But like taking a minute to understand where someone's coming from can just be a complete game changer, you know? And I think it's the exact same thing for this issue.
Well, and I appreciate you for sharing that, because I'm kind of on the other end of that marijuana thing. I have a sister-in-law that really wants to legalize marijuana, and it's not for medical reasons at all. And so I've always known that things like that, there are the two edges that people believe differently. And I really do, after reading this week and seeing like putting myself in other people's shoes and like how they believe in stuff. And in instances like yours, Angelica, that's like 1,000%. I would support something like that too. That would help my child. But it's just really cool to see, like, I guess different stances and how different people can think and view. But, sorry. Should we go to the next question?
Sure.
Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry, it's been crazy here. But okay, the next one. So which of the systems do you feel more comfortable in your advocacy efforts? So I really liked the talk that Kelly gave that we were watching, her little thing. That was really awesome. The three that she really talked about were the microsystem, the mesosystem, and the macrosystem. The microsystem was just your individual or immediate family. Mesosystem were your larger systems like extended families, schools, churches, and neighborhoods. And then macrosystem, the governments and everything like that. And so I really liked how because I've always been really overwhelmed. Like, I cannot change the world. I can't change the government. I can't change anything like that. But I loved how she kind of did. And she started really small. And she started with those pageants where her voice could be heard and everything like that. And so it really opened my eyes to see her being able to change kind of the world. But she started at a really simple level. So right now, which one do I feel most comfortable in? I feel most comfortable in the microsystem in my family. And I think she even said, like, within the next 5 years, we're all going to have that opportunity, that we're going to have to stand up to our families about these hard topics and our beliefs. And like, if we haven't already had that, we're going to need to have those conversations within the next 5 years. And so I just think it's really cool. I feel most comfortable there, but once you start there, why stop? Why not go and, to change things in your neighborhood, or kind of like how she wanted to add the fence for her neighborhood so that the children wouldn't be abducted. Like, why stop just at your family? Why not like keep going and change things in your neighborhood? and everything like that. And even her Costa Vida example where, you know, she saw something that was maybe pornographic and she was wondering, why is this at my family-friendly restaurant? And she took it into her hands to write an email. Why not take that small step? It's easy to write an email. I could write an email, but I don't because I think someone else will. But I think it's just really cool to like start little, but then like, why stop? Why, you know, keep going and make a difference, because no, it takes someone, so why not me?
Yeah, I agree. I think as we become confident in the microsystem, which, you know, I think we all feel fairly confident, you know, I don't think it makes us all that vulnerable to express our feelings to, you know, our close associates or trusted friends. But as we gain confidence, then I think in the face of opposition, we'll, you know, be more articulate about our beliefs or whatever. And I love, yeah, I think in that video of Kelly's, I loved how she was just aware. She was aware of what was going on around her. She was aware of what she could do about it, and she took action. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think oftentimes we don't understand what we're able to do, what resources we can turn to. We forget that we can email the company or whatever, and we just let it pass by thinking, hopefully they'll catch that. And I think as we are just more aware and more intentional and more confident in the small things, that we can affect the larger picture.
Yeah, I feel like one of my favorite things that she said was just like, don't assume that someone else is going to act like you do it. And I feel like just that simple idea, that is like so revolutionary, because isn't that always the case? Like, we're kind of like, oh yeah, like surely somebody else had thought about that, you know, took care of it. But like, that is really not always the case. And so if we kind of try to take that perspective and just say, yeah, like, even if it's already been done, is it really hurtful if the company receives 2 emails instead of 1 about something that's important? Like, no, like that's not bad at all. And so I just think that be the way we try to live. And obviously, like, you know, as we become more informed, then I think our confidence will naturally kind of build, and then we'll kind of into those fears. Like, did you guys watch, it was one of the optional videos for today, but it was the Ryan Anderson, that long.
Yes, I hardly ever watch.
So good.
But it was so good.
Yeah, that was so good. And like, I feel like after watching that, I'm like, yeah, bring on the debates or conversations, whatever, because I feel like I'm just like equipped with all this knowledge. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was so good.
I watched it. It's worth the 50 minutes or whatever it was. Holy cow.
Okay, I'm gonna go watch it. I usually skip that stuff, but I'll go watch it. Okay, I guess it's me. I don't really have much to add to that, though. I just was reminded of, like, I think I put it in my post, like the, we're at the bowling thing for my son's karate, and there was like all these screens right up where the bowling were of like horrible music videos, that naked girls shaking their butts in our faces, like, and it was like for karate kids who are like, my son was like 8, you know, so all the kids are like 8 or 10 or younger even. And my husband was like, we kept making eyes at each other, like, is this happening? And then another song would come on and we're like, okay, now it's Beyonce, and it's fine, you know, as an adult, you just kind of ignore it, but it's like, this is a kid's party, what's going on? So my husband finally went and said something. And like the karate director guy was kind of like almost relieved, or like maybe he was going to say something, but he was just kind of like, yeah, I noticed that too. Like, thank you for saying something. I think sometimes we're like that guy where we're like, we know it's wrong, but we don't really take that step because it's kind of scary, or maybe we will look weird or stand out. But like, after reading all those things and listening to Kelly's thing, it's like, okay, we need to do this. We need to make our stand. We see something's wrong. We need to take care of it right away. If not for everyone around us, at least for our own families. So,
well, and I think kind of going along with what you said, or maybe this is what you said, but I think as we like stand up and, you know, let our voice be heard, we realize that there's all these people that are more than willing to, you know, follow. And it just takes some strong leaders and strong voices to make the change. And often I think we'll find out that we're really not standing alone. At least I think at first we may feel like we're standing alone, but I think as time goes on, we realize we're really not, because there is a lot of good in the world as much as the bad stands out.
What I was going to say is I feel like, you know, with just different issues, I think like sometimes we don't want to stand out because we don't want to be like, you know, just like overly like prudish, like, you know, kind of commanding our beliefs on everyone. But I think that we kind of have like kind of this like moral kind of range. I think that it seems super polarized a lot of the time with how it's portrayed, because we know all the evil that's out there. But I think that most kids are probably concerned with not having their kids watching pornography. You know, this isn't like a strictly prudish, like, oh, we're just trying to be like police. It's like, I think that most parents are trying to do good. And so I think that we will probably be surprised at not weird it is that we're standing for good in a lot of circumstances, especially if there are kids involved. So I think that we just might as well go for it. And yeah, like you said, we probably won't be the only one. So I think it'll be worth the courage it might take us to speak up.
And I think that, I just lost what I was going to say. How we kind of were saying that, like, once we do stand up, a lot of people stand with us. And right now it kind of looks like the bad is overtaking us, but a quote, the one from the reading or the video or whatever by Edmund Burke, he said, "All that is necessary for triumph of evil is that good men do nothing." And so I think that's why it looks like evil is kind of such, it's like predominating right now. It's not, it's just that the good men are afraid to do anything and afraid to kind of take that first step. But it's the reason that evil is out there is because the good men are not really saying anything. So kind of just some final notes with this question. Like, what can I personally do to help? I wrote to speak up, your voice matters, to find something that you're actually concerned about and make a difference through what you're passionate about, become educated on how the system works, blog and write columns. That was awesome. That's something I could do. I don't usually like to do blogs, but I could totally do a blog. And then just get involved with your local, state, and national organizations. Attend conferences to be informed.
Hello.
I also liked how she said, "Oh, hey, Shirley.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you." We're just kind of talking right now about, we're kind of on question number 2, the ecosystems and everything.
Okay.
Just to finish my thought of some more things that I can do in my own little family and community, to just stand up for what I am passionate about and what I believe in. So just to do the research and just to get involved where you can. And I think just to kind of reiterate for Shirley, I really think that it kind of starts in your family and it kind of starts in small and simple things. But once you get comfortable with that, it's easier to kind of build up and then actually get involved in bigger things.
Yep. I agree.
Let's see. Let's do question number 4 about Kelly's presentation. How did Kelly's presentation help your understanding of the ecological approach to family advocacy and why? What did you guys think of that presentation? Any thoughts?
I loved how she talked about, like, you know, the lingo of the other side or whatever. I thought that was really insightful. And as I looked through those documents, I guess I didn't look through them enough because I was like, oh, these seem like, you know, good things. I think an easy skim or whatever would easily pull people in because it seems like a good supportive thing. But it was interesting then watching the video after looking over those documents and seeing, you know, those words that are mistaken, or, you know, the fine print, or, you know, the overall document is good, but if you really look at it, there's so much more. And it's just so sad to think how they pull people in and, you know, just use and abuse people by their tactics or what.
You know, it was very interesting to see, you know, why or basically, you know, you should not support it. But at the same time, I got, you know, like, but still, if you don't agree with what they teach, still what they're doing is good, you know, and it can be so damaging because those countries are very, very serious. They have serious problem with child abuse and things like that. So, like I put in my blog, in my discussion board, you know, what is worse, to protect the children now or to protect the one that coming in the future? I don't know. That was kind of tricky for me.
I think the thing that makes it hard too is like she outlined in her presentation, like it's kind of like exactly the way that Satan works, like classically, where there's so much good in there. Obviously, we advocate for protecting children. No, you know, like that is like should be a huge priority, protecting children, protecting families, marriages. And they try to sneak in these little things. Like I was gonna say the same thing as you, Jamie, where like when I read those documents, I was like, oh, like I didn't really think they were bad until I saw a question. Why do you think conservatives might have a problem with these documents or whatever? And then I was kind of thinking, I'm like, okay, like let me like read them again, like what's really going on here. And then when I started to see the stuff about how children deserve to have these certain rights, something kind of, I had this like sting, kind of like how you can see how that would go really, really wrong. Like when they started, when she was talking in her presentation about how you can take a little phrase like that and suddenly it means that you don't get to try to bring your kid to church with you if they don't want to go. Like it totally undermines parenting. And, you know, and so like, you know, as much as we want to advocate for children to have, you know, rights and things, agree with documents that in there that will also ruin the family and like undermine parenting and give the government so much control over what goes on in our homes. And so, you know, as much as we definitely should have policy and things that are protecting children, and that's super important, because this document is trying to sneak in things.
So Mackenzie, but what happens if the parents are not fulfilling their role and they're not protecting their own children?
No, but that's why it's hard. It's like, unfortunately, I don't see us coming out with a document to not try to sneak in these things. And that's what makes it completely hard, is because obviously, yeah, we want to fight for a document that's going to be protecting children's rights. But unfortunately, fight together with these things that we don't believe in. And so that makes it hard, because I don't know what we do in a situation like that. You know, it's hard.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate part. You know, those are absolutely.
It seems to me that it's hard to, you know, put together the two ideas to defend the children, especially in that circumstances. You know, I think that if the law were here for the U.S. alone, it could be easier to draw, you know, kind of like a law that it kind of have the two ideas together. But when you're talking about like a third world country and Africa and things like that, it will be even harder. I don't know how to do it.
Right. Well, because the trouble always comes down to, where do we draw the line, right? Because you obviously want the government to get involved in homes where children are being abused, you know, like that's not okay. That needs to end. But where's the line? Because I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but like the camel in the tent, you know, where you like give a little and then suddenly, okay, take, you know? And so if you give the government a little bit of freedom to step in, take away children who are being abused, then it's like you open the door and you let them, suddenly they're dictating how you raise your children and whether or not you can take them to church and all these different things. That's really the problem, I think. Where do you draw the line? And then continue to be the struggle, is because everybody has a different idea of where that should be.
North Valley Parkway. It's about 10 minutes north of here, right before Anthem. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of lost each other in that parking lot there, but yeah.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they want to add to that question, or should we go on?
You bet. Take care.
Last one. What historical events and factors can you think of that have contributed to the disintegration of the family? Thoughts on that question?
Well, I think the most fascinating and eye-opening thing for me this week was to see, you know, how policies are legalized. And oftentimes I'm like, oh, you know, that does do some good maybe or whatever. But overall, it just completely demoralizes society because it lowers expectations. And I think, so I don't know, I think, you know, it's hard to say because I think the divorce, like, whatever, when that was changed to make divorce easier. It's unfortunate because I think in some ways that's a good thing. but in other ways, I feel like it's completely demoralized us, and we just haven't. I don't know. We just don't hold ourselves accountable, and we don't. I don't know. It's hard to say. So I think there's a lot of things that were maybe initially a good thing that have just slowly gone from white to black or whatever it may be.
Right. There's definitely like so many gray areas because I feel like, it's kind of like the problem that's never going to be able to be solved because, I think about like marriage, like in like the no fault divorce, it's like kind of changed the face of marriage in a lot of ways and made divorce more accessible. And obviously in general, of course, we want to say divorce is bad, but like there are cases where like it's better probably that the people were divorced. You know what I mean? It's hard to define those exceptions. Everything like super hard is like same thing with letting houses protecting against child abuse or divorce or whatever. It's like we want to step in and make all these regulations. Really, like the problem comes down to just like in general, like we're like moral decline, and so you can't kind of count on people to kind of be just decent people. Like we used to kind of just, I think, take that for granted in a lot of ways. Like I think the further the world gets away from God, like we're trying to dictate with laws what would be completely fixed if people just kind of had moral values coming from like sort of source. Like we have religion, which kind of like determines our moral values, and so we don't need laws to dictate every single one of our behaviors because we're kind of governing ourselves based on a solid set of morals. But I think that really a thing we can just we have anymore because people live by all sorts of different, and so there's just like no way for us to make laws to kind of dictate all of these different things that'll go wrong. It's like if you stray from the perfect path, like 1,000 rules. It kind of, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of like the whole law of Moses versus like law, where it's like, he had to dictate like exactly what things they had to do because he couldn't count on them to just do good and just figure it out because they were just good people. Like obviously the higher law, which we try to live, is where we're actually just being good moral people, and so we don't need all of our decisions to be determined for us. But we don't have that in our society anymore, and that's the problem. People to do the decent thing because they don't.
I agree with what you're saying. Kind of like when we follow the gospel, we have the celestial law, and then when people start diverting, changing those, they kind of have to create their own law that will be obviously different to the celestial law, and it's kind of like a lesser law, and that is what is so hard to conciliate, to put it together, because it is, kind of like departing from the truth.
Right. It's like once you try to get away from the perfect way that has already been determined, it's impossible to predict all of the kind of problems that you're going to encounter, which is why, obviously, it's the same thing with trying to redefine marriage. You don't think that when you redefine marriage, you're going to create all these spin-off problems, but then you do, and then you have to try and rewrite all the laws to accommodate all of these changes that you didn't anticipate. And so it's kind of just this happening, spiraling over and over again,
And things are so complicated, right? When we just change what is right. Thank you, Mackenzie. You said everything that I wanted to say.
Yeah, it makes me think of like one of the events in history is like women's rights, how that's a good thing, and it's gone from women having like equal rights and they can go to school and do all the things that they want to do to like women don't need men anymore. We're to the point where I can live my life without a man. It's gone from this great thing where women are equal or have equal opportunities to beyond that, and men are not necessary. They can have babies without men. They don't need a father. They don't need, all of these things are helping to like deteriorate, which we obviously in our church, we promote education. That's why we're all here. And, we believe in women's rights and treating women equally and fairly, but to take it, beyond what it was kind of their main purpose when they started out with women's rights is kind of like you said, like now you've got all these laws and all these different things and all these unintended repercussions from, you know, all these people with having babies without fathers, or, you know, leading to the gay rights, or, you know, a variety of things. So it's spun out of control.
I also thought it was interesting that they said that, I don't remember which country it was, but one of them was trying to define gender in 5 different ways. And I was thinking to myself, 5 different ways? I can only think of like 2, maybe 3, but 5? Like, how would you even do that? But it was just kind of funny to see like how things are going from what once was like a strict, this is how it is, to now it's like there's just so many different ways everyone can.
Well, and along with that, which we already kind of covered, but with marriage, it was fascinating reading that book, and that's part of the optional clip that he goes into more. But he talks about, you know, how now there's a wed lease, so you can just lease a marriage, so you can just leave after 5 years, or the
no inside.
what was that, truple and
monogamish.
And you know, I think I mentioned this to you guys a few weeks ago. I saw now that you can marry yourself, you can commit to yourself, and now it's just anything goes. It's been completely redefined. So I think that goes along with what you said about women's rights and whatever. It's just been taken to this extreme, and unfortunately, I don't think there's any going back. So bring on the second coming.
No, it's like cat's out of the bag. Like, sorry, you can't really like, you know, unwind this thing that we have like unintentionally created. It's like, you know, I don't know how we are supposed to fix this problem. I honestly don't think that we will. I think that it's
right now,
spiral out of control, and then the second coming will happen, and everything will be good. But until then, I mean, this is like, and not just saying that kind of loosely. It's like, we know that this is what's going to happen. This is kind of what we signed up for when we came here. We knew the world was going to continue to get worse and totally chaotic, and that evil was going to be called good and good evil. And, you know, and this is what we're experiencing. Here it is. Look around. It's happening, you know?
Yeah. You know what? Something within those lines. A few months ago, I remember I got this National Geographic magazine, and I really wish that you can see this, you know. The title was The New Sexes or something like that. And we're like, probably I would say 10 people, different sexes. I was like, I kind of like a boy, like that was a girl that was a boy. Like, I was like, I didn't know that there were so many. But the interesting thing is like, there was no a woman there, you know, there was no just, there was just a female. And when I look at that, and I will look at the picture and I will send it to you by email, you know, it was so interesting to me to see, Satan doesn't want a woman there, because a woman is the one that can have the babies, the one that can influence the children, you know, for good. And it's so interesting how our role was diminished, you know. Somebody was talking about radical feminism and how everything started like in a good way. And then to me, it's kind of like Satan trying to say, okay, how can I use the good thing, you know, for my purpose, and start introducing things that were so detrimental for woman, marriage, and motherhood. It's, you know, very, very interesting for me.
Well, what's crazy too is the deception is so sneaky that he's making women be the ones that are advocating for women to give up the most important role they could ever have. It's not like men are imposing this on us. It's women now. He's got believing that they're being oppressed. And so it's like it's like completely reversed. Like, we have been given the opportunity to have this incredible role. Oh, like, this is horrible. Like, we don't want this. Like, give it up. And we're fighting to like diminish this like opportunity that we have been given as women to like bring children into the world.
Vayan ustedes. Yeah, that is true. Wow. It's scary. For us, it's kind of easier to discern because we know the truth. But there are so many good people, you know, that they like totally confused. And that is the dangerous part. I am so glad we have missionaries.
All right, does anyone else have any final thoughts, maybe that we didn't get to discuss based off the questions, or any overall feelings or anything you want to do differently this week because of what you learned?
My last final thought, which is not the first time I've said it, watch that video because it's So good. I don't know. I think I say this every week. I start typing the discussion board and I'm like, this is the same thing. Because I feel like this week was so valuable, and then I remember that every week in this class is super valuable. But I don't know, like I feel like there was just a lot of insight to move forward to influence, you know, the micro system and then the macro system. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel more equipped with the resources and the knowledge to do so and where to turn to have that influence. And I think, you know, I think it really just starts too with the micro system, but strengthening our own foundation so that we can influence even the micro system. I think as we just work on ourselves and build out, it's just cool what the Lord can make of our lives. And I think it's a lot. You know, I think after a week like this, we have high expectations of things that we want to do, but it's incredible the things that the Lord can magnify that much.
Yeah, that is true. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does someone want to, I guess we didn't talk about this earlier, but will someone kind of summarize briefly just what we talked about?
I didn't take notes, but I can do that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we just talked about, you know, the micro and ecosystem and macro system. So the different systems, and we talked about Kelly's presentation and how that kind of influenced us and increased our understanding there. And we talked about just the different policies and things in the world and how they really do influence us, and how you know, something that could be seemingly good and beneficial for, you know, a crowd of people can so easily just lead to this slippery slope of completely demoralizing society. Does anyone else have anything to add to the summary?
That was awesome. Thank you so much. If there's no final thoughts, then I think this wraps up our presentation.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
And who
Thank you.
mind to start it next week? Or I guess we can do a podcast.